Okay, I want to welcome everyone around the world. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening perhaps to some of you as well. On behalf of the Clean Energy Business Council, I want to welcome you to this, which is our 6th webinar in our series, covering electric vehicle infrastructure in the Middle East and North Africa region. So we're looking at the landscape and outlook in this post-COVID-19 world. We'll be covering this for the next 1 hour, 20 minutes. So we look forward to the discussion with all of you. We have an outstanding panel of speakers today, starting with Sam from GreenParking. You want to say hello, Sam?
Hi.
Abdelrahman from Schneider Electric as well is on.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
Yarob from CATEC Mobility.
Hello, everybody.
Torsten from Hager Group.
Hello from my side.
And Stephan from ENGIE.
Hi there. Good afternoon.
So if you have any questions for any of the panelists, you could ask questions throughout the presentations by going to the questions part of your GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar panel. Feel free to ask questions again at any time throughout the webinar. I want to remind everyone that we will send a link to this presentation recording and the slide presentations to all webinar attendees following this webinar. We will send 2 pages of key remarks as well following the webinar that will be shared with everyone. Okay, so with that, I think we could go ahead and start with Stephan. Do you want to kick us off with an introduction to the Clean Energy Business Council and the electric vehicle topic?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to meet you and welcome you. And now to these days, we have to say meet you. Would have been happy to shake hands, but that would be for some other days. I'm very happy to see you all in the name of the CEBC, Clean Energy Business Council, and our working task force called the Future Mobility Club, FMC for the Future. Today, very interesting moment, because in this conference we have representatives from over 45 countries, which is quite a lot. Many participants registered from over 50 companies and organizations. So we're very happy to have you all today. Some of you during lunch break. So we can say that this is becoming international gatherings, even though the purpose of Clean Business Council is to focus on MENA region, and that would be the purpose of us today. So let me get into more details on what is the Clean Energy Business Council. For those who don't know, it's a not-for-profit company representing the private sector involved in clean energy sector across the MENA region. Our goal is to establish a bridge between the public and the private sector. We've been doing this for the last 10 years, and we're trying to drive development of much needed regulation and policy and networking, obviously, to support the development of clean energy sector. Next, please. What we do at the CEBC, for those who are not active participants, well, we are a key organization representing the private sector involved in renewable sector and all kind of clean energy business across the MENA region. We are based here in the UAE, recently in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. We work on behalf of our members to promote renewables and clean technologies. We organize partnerships with governments across these regions, with stakeholders. We organize events and create opportunities to collaborate. We also develop and present policies that could be, in this case, for the future of mobility, looking ahead, looking at the future of some particular solutions, green solutions, supporting governments in their developments. And we provide then advocacy through leadership for this sector. Next, please. So we also host a workshop. More recently, we focused on webinars, obviously. We used to host great events, allowing also members to interact and to network. We publish reports, case studies, market surveys. I'll get back to you on this later. We are launching a survey regarding mobility. We have a range of working groups on different fields, and we also run programs for school and for women in the clean energy environment. We have around 120 members. This is just a flavor of those companies that are part of our association today. That comes from private sectors with interest in green mobility, energy efficiency, for instance, law, banks, others kind of companies in the insurance sector. But also we have quite strong partners and governmental bodies that could include, for those that recognize, some famous names in this slide. So today we're going to develop further on one of our working group. This is to give you for 2020 the agenda for the CBCs to work on sustainable climate finance, energy efficiency, future mobility, women in clean energy, and also a program for school. We've been running these programs for the last couple of years, and today, as you all aware, we are going to focus on the Future Mobility Club. The Future Mobility Club's mission is to support the transition of the automotive industry in the UAE, mainly because that's what we see from the MENA region. The UAE is picking up, or was trying to really lead in this field post-COVID. Let's see what's going on now. Hopefully we get more insights from the situation at the moment and the future. And obviously trying to lead towards greener and smarter means of transport. In this particular task force, we have today more than 35 companies registered. ENGIE, as I'm part of, is also a member, an active member, but we also have governmental bodies and other partners. We have tried to focus our work because obviously the subject is quite large. We are focusing ourselves in two subgroups, which is infrastructure and regulation, which is the topic of today, trying to support together with regulator the draft, the preparation of new mobility policies, for instance, increase the market reach from the EV infrastructure and other providers in this market, being a lobbying platforms for some of us, networking, gathering information around infrastructure and regulation. Another group which has been formed is working on the market awareness and trying to bring more awareness, which is, we believe, is very important in this nascent market, about EV, the economics around this, and the environmental benefits of moving towards greener mobility. This is moving around enterprises, fleet operator, owners, from the B2B to the B2C and B2G. We're trying to really create awareness. We organize events, we organize talks, we organize meetings with the authorities, which gives you good visibility as a member if you are part of this group. So on the next slide, I will just go rapidly on what we're doing, but as you understand, we are trying to work a lot, bringing you more and more information, trying to share information, so it's a great platform for exchange. We are gathering regularly, and we always ask our members to present themselves, their solutions, their product. So we are all well aware, and whenever we represent the future mobility and transportation among our own stakeholders, we are well prepared to present other companies as well. We are working on new papers, on market surveys, on new webinars. Like today, there was one already a couple of weeks ago organized by the CBC, and even sometimes when we could, and hopefully soon again, organize test drive for most of our stakeholders, particularly in this region. A lot of people still don't have experience the drive of an electric vehicle, and it's quite enjoyable. Most of us are coming back very happy from this test drive. One last thing I wanted to tell you is that in the name of CEBC, FMC, we organize survey, and today we will launch a new survey. Please take some time to respond to it. It will be very helpful to the community. We are all here to share more insight, so that would be a great added value for all of us. Obviously, I'm looking forward to meeting you in person. Beside the CEBC board member and representative of the CEBC today, I'm also an ENGIE employee. I'm in charge of strategy, innovation, and digitalization for our business unit based in Dubai. As a group, we are looking a lot towards the future of mobility. We are engaged heavily in Europe and in some other parts of the world, like Latin America, North Africa, bringing solutions to go towards a greener and a zero carbon, hopefully, transportation. So I'm very interested with the topics that will be discussed today. I hope you'll enjoy it. You'll get some fresh information from the market. And I would like maybe to start with the first interaction with you all. I think that's the beauty of our webinars today, is that we don't want to keep it, you know, a bit of a lecture for an hour. Would be more happy to get the chance to learn between ourselves. So first question, if you could click on those buttons, is what sector are you working for? Are you from government, private sector, EV infrastructure, charging station, suppliers, or others? That would be great to break the ice. I'm very happy to meet all of you. Whatever the digital mean, you can always contact me and others, obviously, from the CEBC. All details are communicated to you. I hope you enjoy this 1 hour that we can spend together, and go back to work after that with more ideas for sustainable and greener mobility. Thank you. I'll give it back to you, Reda, to start with a great day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. So everyone should see the poll results right now. So it's interesting, we have mostly private sector, 51%, followed by government at 16%, other 13%, individuals 12%, and then electric vehicle supply equipment 8%. So it's just nice to see who is in the collective room, so to speak, around the world. Okay, so with that, we will move on to the next part of our webinar, which is a presentation from Torsten Hager. So Torsten is the innovation manager with the energy management for the Hager group. He will talk about lessons learned from the European markets for this region, the MENA region, and how COVID-19 has helped, or otherwise, the EV infrastructure sector in Europe, and how our region could benefit from that. So Torsten, you want to take it away?
Yeah. Many thanks, Rita, for the introduction, and many thanks for giving me the opportunity today to give you some insights about Hager Group and what we are doing in Europe, and of course also talking about the European market. If you go to the next slide, please, and again the next. So let's start with the market. If we have a look on the diagram on the left-hand side, we see that of course the Chinese market is far the largest, followed by US market, but then you see already the German market, followed by Norwegian, UK, Netherlands, and France for battery electric vehicles, but also plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. Of course, the markets are much smaller, the European markets itself, compared to China or US, but nevertheless, they are all growing, and especially if we switch our focus on the right diagram, where we have only the battery electric vehicles, we've seen a very, very strong growth in the last year, so 2019 compared to 2018. And you see that Germany, who more or less doubled the size or the number of electric vehicles which have been sold, it's really impressive. Even stronger Netherlands on place number 2, followed by Norway and France, and especially Germany and France. These are our core markets at Hager Group, where we are quite strong and where we have very, very good experience and deep insights in what's going on. And that's what I would like to share with you in the next few minutes. If we switch to the next slide and have a little bit deeper look on the infrastructure on the German market, we see that over the last 8 years, the number of electric vehicle charging stations was growing very constantly, and we have today around about 20,000 charging stations installed, with roughly about 56,000 of charging points. And usually we have type 2 sockets, not cables or not plugs. So in Germany, it's really focused on the type 2 sockets, followed by the normal plug with about 20% of the installations. And more or less half of the installations are with a 22 kilowatt charger. If we compare these figures to the figures in France, which you can see on the next slide, we see first that, of course, and it's in line with the number of electric vehicles, the charging stations or the number of charging stations in France is lower, but also the installation habits in the past years were a little bit differently. So you see there were a lot of strong increases in a very short period of time, which is linked to some single initiatives to make installations. And on the other hand side, if we have a look on the technology which is used in France for charging the cars, you see, of course, or you still see the type 2 socket, which is there with or represented with 35% of the installation, but strongly closely followed by the normal plug. And that's a big difference to the German market. And according to this, or in line with this, you see that the power of the charging station is much lower in average than it is in Germany. You have about 35% of the charging stations with the power less than or up to 10 kilowatt. And the 22 kilowatt, it's only 37% of the total number of charging stations. If we go to the next slide to go a little bit deeper into technology and the challenges which are arising out of this. Please go back once again. If we go back to the last slide, if it's possible, yes, perfectly, so I can see it. We have, of course, we are focused on the electric vehicle charging station. You can see it here in the middle. But from Hager perspective, we see a very, very close link to the energy storage itself, which is again linked to photovoltaics. And on the other hand side, to the energy management, which is orchestrating all of this. And if you now go to the next slide, you see the typical problem we have today in our networks in Europe. You have it in the networks, but you also have it in multi-apartment buildings, where it is from the problem, it's the same problem, but then it's in one building instead of in a street or in some streets. What we have today is we have typically a substation with about 600 kVA power, which could be delivered, and we have about 300 households behind. This means that on average we have 2 kVA per household, which could be supplied from the substation. In the past, it was not an issue in Europe because as we are not used to have so many air conditioning, and only some countries are used to have electric heating, it worked somehow to have only 2 kVA for each building at the same time. So it was more to say, okay, all the loads are shifted over time, so it's not an issue if there is one building with a higher load. But with the electric vehicles, a lot of loads are coming in the network, are connected to the network at the same point in time. So they are all charging or trying to charge in parallel, and this would overload completely our substations and our networks. And we are in Hager Group are working on solutions, of course, to solve this issue. We cannot change the substation and not the network cables, which are digged in the streets. But of course, we can make the buildings itself much smarter combined with a smarter charging station equipment. And what we are doing is basically very easy. We have a charging station which is able to communicate with the car or with the cars to get information with ISO 15118 protocol about the state of charge and the needs of the car. And this information is communicated to a central intelligence, to a central energy manager in the building. And this energy manager again is connected via a cloud system to other to the other energy managers, and also in some prototype phases also to the grid operator system. And additionally to this, we could have battery storage systems connected to this environment, and PV, which is able to provide additional power to boost the charging and to switch in and so on. So that's the first technology approach we are strongly working on, and we are seeing to become more and more common in Germany to make the infrastructure in total, the grid together with the building, together with the charging station, more intelligent. The second topic we are facing, we see on the next slide, it's the bidirectional charging of the car. Of course, today's cars are usually not able to be discharged, but we see a clear trend on this side that the cars will be able to do this. And we, from our side, we've designed a solution where we have, on the one hand side, a battery and PV directly DC connected to the DC charger of the car to be able to discharge the car and to use the energy from the battery in the building and also in the grid to power other devices, of course, and to provide auxiliary service to the grid operators and stuff like this.
2 minutes, Torsten.
Yeah, perfect. That's perfectly well, because I'm very close to the end of my presentation. If we go to the next slide, which is more or less the last one, which gives you an impression that the technology here I'm talking about, the bidirectional charging, is not only pure theory and PowerPoint, what you have seen in the slide before, but we are really testing this equipment in real life. Here it's on a parking space of a large company in Germany, where we have installed such a system, and we are already discharging the cars and using the energy or the batteries in the cars to provide the use case I described before, to improve the bottleneck or bottleneck situations in the low voltage grid, auxiliary service to the grid. But we could also imagine, and these are topics we are working in parallel to participate in local energy marketplaces, to trade energy between how different households, different people, different companies. And on private sector, of course, the increase of autarky and is one of the key use cases we are seeing here. To sum up on my last slide, please. If you go next, here it is. Yeah, to really sum it up in 2 bullet points, I can say that the markets for EV, electric vehicle charging equipment, as well as energy management and storage, PV, all these markets are strongly growing in Europe. And we see this clear trend that it's not only a European phenomenon, but also a phenomenon all over the world. So everywhere we are looking, we see that these markets are strongly growing, so also in the MENA region. And last but not least, we see the technology trends. They are required everywhere in the world. So it's not a thing you do only for Europe, but you can transfer all this technology bricks also to other countries around the world. So thank you. That's it from my side, Reda.
Thank you so much, Torsten. So for the audience, we will have questions at the last 20 minutes in the discussion period. So please, if you have any questions, put it to the questions part of the GoToWebinar software. We already have a lot of questions, so we're excited for the coming discussion. Okay, so before the next presentation, I think, should we show our next poll, Ahmed, please? So we have another poll for you, and this poll is really about your personal preferences. We're curious just to hear from the audience in terms of, do you own an EV right now, an electric vehicle right now, or do you intend to purchase one sometime in the future? So we have several options. You could choose more than one option. If you own 1 or more EVs right now, the first option, if you intend to purchase something over the next year or 2, or maybe longer term, next 2 to 5 years. The fourth option is if you're really not interested in EVs and you're only interested really in purchasing internal combustion engine vehicles. And then the last option is if you're not actually planning to purchase any more vehicles at all, and you're going to rely on ride sharing or public transportation options, Uber, Lyft, and others. So we'll just give this a little bit of time for folks to vote. Maybe about 10 more seconds. And then Ahmed, you could close the poll and display the results. Hurry up and get your votes, maybe 5 seconds or so. Okay, Ahmed, can you close the poll, please? Let's see the results. Okay, here you go. Let's see. Okay, so 7% of the folks on this webinar own an EV right now. 24% intend to purchase something over the next 1 to 2 years. 54% over the next 2 to 5 years. 6% are more interested in internal combustion engine vehicles, and 11% are just bought into the ride sharing, public transport and Uber economy. Okay, very interesting to see. Okay, folks, so we'll go on to the next presentation now. So we have Mr. Yarob Awwab, who is the Regional Director with CATEC Mobility, and he will present a comparative study between the UAE and Jordan markets and the lessons learned from each market. Yarob, please take it away.
Hello, everybody. Before we start, I would like to thank everybody for attending this webinar, and also to thank CEBC for organizing this exciting event. So can we start go to the next slide. Rida, next slide, please. Okay, next. Next again. Yeah, so on our agenda today, I will quickly speak about CATEC mobility. So CATEC was established in 2005 as a technology solution provider. Please go to next slide, Rida. Yeah, so we are based in Abu Dhabi and have offices in Dubai, Amman, and Riyadh. And we've been serving this market since 14 years as a technology solution provider. So in 2018, we established our e-mobility unit. We started by building a partnership with EVBox, and they were truly amazing partner and very supportive, and we learned a lot from them. And since then, we have delivered successful e-mobility projects in both UAE and Jordan. This includes the supply and installation of all kinds of chargers from home, business, commercial, and fast DC chargers. Also, we run a charging management platform, and we provide this platform as a service to our customers. So our goal is to bring our experience in mobility to more countries in the region, hopefully during the coming period. Next slide, please. Rida. Next slide. Okay, so energy and transport has always been related. Jordan has more than 1.8 million vehicles today of all types for a population of 10 million. 60% of CO2 emissions is coming from transport sector, which consumes 52% of final energy consumption. Also, Jordan energy is generated from imported oil and gas. So all these are good reasons for Jordan to consider alternatives for their transport system and support the electrification of vehicles initiatives. Next, please. Next slide. So Jordan is considered as a leading country in the Middle East with more than 22,000 electric vehicles. There are two main reasons why Jordan has this big number of EVs. First is because of the government has been making incentives in terms of tax exempts on EV imports. The second reason is the high cost of fuel in Jordan. So you can see here as example, an EV driver will pay around $3 for a distance of 180 kilometers, while a normal driver of a normal car will pay around $14 for the same distance. Worth mentioning that most of the EV cars available today in Jordan are second-hand cars charging at 7.4 kilowatt. Those are mainly owned by a younger population seeking cost-effective solutions for transportation. Also, there are many taxis shifting to EVs with support from companies such as Uber. Next slide, please. Okay, so when it comes to charging facilities, the question is always, where do I charge? Okay, home has been always the ideal place for overnight charging. This is a cost-effective solution and easy to install. However, charging at home may not be enough for many EV drivers. And this is why many drivers would like to see charging points at workplaces or in any other public places. Unfortunately, today there are a few places providing such service. The main reason is that such facilities cannot sell charging services at this time. So they have to incur the cost of devices installation and electricity while providing free of charge charging services. The third option of charging is using fast chargers as a payable service. This is currently only allowed and available in gas stations. Today there is around 15 fast DC charger in Jordan. And this number is considered low for a city like Amman with more than 20,000 EV. So the waiting time is usually on these chargers, it takes no less than 40 minutes to 1 hour on the queue. Also, these devices are being very highly utilized with utilization exceeding 80% during over 24 hours. But of course, that was before COVID-19. And the main reason why the number is still limited is because due to the high investment cost needed to install fast DC chargers. Next, please. So there are many challenges when it comes to EV charging infrastructure. First, and for home charging, most of the population are living in apartments. So allocating dedicated charging points may not be always easy. Another challenge is related to the regulations of selling EV charging services, which is only allowed for gas stations at this time. So businesses are reluctant to investing in charging facilities. The high upfront cost of setting up fast DC chargers is another challenge in Jordan. Also, grid limitation can be an issue at some point in the future with the increase of EV vehicles. So to fix all these challenges with too many stakeholders and regulations, there is really a need for a national strategy to support the electrification of transport in Jordan. Next, please. Okay, and regarding the impact of COVID-19 on transport and general on the economy in Jordan, and as most of all the countries in this world, Jordan's economy has been severely impacted by this pandemic. And we've seen EV sales orders placed on hold, and maybe some of them are cancelled. Shipments and logistics are affected, of course, and access to charging facilities has also been affected due to lockdown and limited working hours. Regarding the decrease of cost of oil prices, we don't believe this will have a major impact on the EV initiatives. And in fact, we believe and we hope that EV business and the whole economy will gradually recover during 2020. Next, please. So to close my presentation, I would like to highlight some of the opportunities created in the Jordanian market due to the shift toward clean energy. There are many initiatives in the area of infrastructure upgrade, such as increasing infrastructure efficiency by using smart solutions, such as load balancing and other solutions. We believe there will be a lot of opportunities in setting up EV chargers in public places and parking lots. Electric fleets can also be considered as good opportunities for many businesses seeking to lower their transport cost, that will including delivery companies, taxis, and others. And finally, we believe that EV networks will start to emerge in Jordan, hopefully this year. And these networks will eventually allow EV drivers to use their mobile charging in public places. And I believe my colleague Abdelrahman will talk more about the EV networks. So when this pandemic is over, we are hoping to see more initiatives in these areas. That was the end of my presentation. I thank you all again for attending this webinar, and I wish you all safety. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yarob. Very excellent presentation, and we look forward to the discussion with you during the panel discussion. Okay, so our next speaker will be Mr. Abdelrahman Sami. Abdelrahman is a key account manager with Schneider Electric, and he will present a local case study versus global case study to explain how EV infrastructure is necessary to achieve more efficiency. Abdelrahman.
Thank you, Rida. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. So you can go to presentation, Rida. My name is Abdelrahman Sami. I am managing the EV chargers sales business in the Gulf region. Go ahead, Rida, the second slide. So first, I'm going to go talk to give just a very brief information about Schneider Electric. We are a global manufacturer with 27 billion euro revenue last year. We are in every part of the so we are very specialized in the energy management, and we are in every aspect, starting from the substation, generation substation, till your home, till your sockets and GRMS system. And this helps us to have more broad approach when we look into the EV chargers. We don't look only to the hardware, we look to the complete picture. In the Gulf, Schneider Electric had a dedicated sales team since 2012, so they have been here for quite a long time, and we have seen the evolution from the EV chargers being only something vibe, only for the early adopters, people who are really interested in new technology, to being a more mature approach. Even for us as a Schneider Electric, we evolved from having only team which is focused only on selling hardware, pure hardware, chargers of all kinds of type. We have an AC, DC, we have different kind of chargers, standard one, smart one. We are moving now to be more e-mobility solution provider, because we discovered, and we're going to discuss this, one of the aspects we're going to discuss, that having only the hardware is only part of the game. The technology to charge a lithium-ion battery has been around for quite a long time. It's used in other applications like the UPS. So having only a charging station is not a challenge these days. You can have quite a big variety open in the market. Another fact that even with the current situation, we're seeing a growth, and we're continuing the growth in 2020 for the electric vehicle chargers and e-mobility solutions. Yes, COVID-19, it is a big challenge for everyone. No one can deny this. And part of the growth we are seeing is from the backlog we had from last year, and also because we are early in the growth cycle. So I would imagine if you're going to look at Europe, so Europe, which is a more mature in its cycle, they're going to have some slowdown. We are in a really early stage. We're in the early growth stage, so the growth might slow down, but I don't think it's gonna stop. And there is also another fact which is related to the Gulf specifically, that when you work on a project, you have a specs and you cannot change the specs later on the project. So whatever you have projects which is now on and being executed, you are going to have the EV chargers part of the project specs, part of the requirement, and it's going to be executed. Not like other countries where the project contracts are more loose or it's less organized, so you can change the specs later on in the project cycle. So it's not all doom and gloom because of COVID-19 situation. Next slide, Reda. What you are seeing from the market insights in starting from UAE, which is now, I guess it's the more advanced one among all GCC countries, is UAE, and the wider GCC region. That now it's a more mature approach. It's not a complementary offer anymore. It's not a wow factor anymore. It's not only for early adapters. COVID-19, okay, there is a huge uncertainty and there is a huge struggles with the COVID-19 situation. However, it also acts as a stress test for the EV business. We were expecting, if the EV charger as an idea or the electric car is just a vibe that's gonna fade, we're gonna see this very clear now. But actually, the market is moving. There's gonna be some slow. We're gonna see some difficulties, but the electric cars are gonna continue for the next 100 years and gonna be maybe the main means of moving people around for the future. We are seeing also healthy evolving authority requirements. So last 2 weeks we have the new requirement of Abu Dhabi, the RSB is being released, I think last 2 weeks. So the utility also, the authority, they're not giving up on the case of the EV chargers. We know from other products that when you have a difficult economic situation, if something which is not really mature, you find that the authority and utility are losing interest in it. However, it's not the case for the EV. There are continuous discussion with the utilities and authorities on developing the specs, having more regulations, and definitely more support is needed. We need to have more incentives. We need to have more flexibility for private. And I think this is going to happen with the COVID situation, because when you have a tighter pocket, when you have a more difficult economic situation, the authorities, especially in the Gulf region, which they're classically being very dominant, they're going to show more flexibility toward the public-private partnership or having private CPOs, private channel operators for the charging network operators. So we do expect to see more flexibility in this regard and more cooperation between the government and the private sector. The energy availability remains the obstacle, and I think you can see it yourself from the theme that happened in both nice, very good presentations before me. That yes, remains that finding the power enough to charge the cars is one of the big obstacles, and we know that also again with the tighter pockets of the government, spending money to increase power in the existing mature cities is going to be so expensive. And accordingly, you need to find a way to utilize whatever power you have currently without having to build a new substation, having more new cables, having all this huge capex. We see some demand movement, and this is very interesting to discover how it's going to move. If more people are moving more to work from homes, that means that the requirement, so the requirement of power during the day, because it's very important for utilities, it's going to move, the curve is going to move from the offices area, which is more busy during the day, to more home areas. And we do expect to see some more requirements for the home, slower charging, home charger versions at the buildings, rather than the public, more faster chargers in the public areas. Just to give you some fun fact, okay, it's a fact that the capex required to add one charger in an already developed area, that you need to add a low voltage panel in your home, you need to add more cables in the main cabinet, and you need to add more substation. It can be between 10 to 70k euro per charger, and depends where are you in which part of the city you are, what is the power availability you have, and how much work you need to do on ground to increase the power availability. So how do we address the issue of maximum utilization of what we have today as a current infrastructure to allow to charge more? Next slide, Torsten. Sorry, Reda. So on the left-hand side, just an example. Look, if you have an office building, let's see, it's 100 to 200 kilowatts, and you're going to have some EV chargers, you can have between 8 to 25% increase in the demand for the electric vehicles only. Don't look to the cars as if they are your mobile. Your mobile is really tiny, but the cars, they have considerable power. So when you add this to the current existing area where you have been living, which is developed maybe 10 years ago, 20, 50 years ago, the current infrastructure will not allow you to have this. When you look to the right curve, normally this is the normal situation. The up part is the normal situation. You have current consumption, which changes during the day, and you have a contract which is facility subscribed power between you and the utility, the blue line, and you have the maximum capacity that the current network can deliver power without having a failure, without having shutdowns, without having fires or breakdowns, which is the red line. When you add in the lower graph, when you add more demand for the EV chargers during the day, you're gonna easily cross both the facility subscribed power level. So you're gonna pay penalty to the utility because you have a current subscription. If you're increasing more, you're gonna pay penalty on it, and you're gonna also have an overloads. And overloads, it means power shutdowns. It means failures. So the name of the game is to utilize the power within this curve, everything below the blue line, which is the facility subscribed power.
2 minutes,
slide,
Abdelrahman. 2 minutes.
Sure. So the solution we are providing for everyone is it's an energy management solution, and we discovered that having a very big and centralized system sometimes doesn't work. So it's not easy to coordinate between different government utilities and authorities to have one centralized system to monitor everything. And we will keep working with the utilities in different areas and sharing information, having this huge amount of data availability. It's there. We have the solution to do it. However, it proves to be CAPEX wise and organization wise, it's not easy. So read the second slide, please. So we went to more centralized system where we're gonna have more decentralized system where you're gonna have a load management system in your facility. The idea of the load management system, if you can see from the left figure or left curve, you have the facility consumption, your normal consumption every day for the AC, for the light, and you have the pink one, which is the EV demand required. If we're gonna go without having some energy management to utilize the demand, the unused demand within the system, we're gonna face failures. Having a load management system on premises, which is a local one, without having the issue of privacy, it's a local one, no need for cloud connectivity. You can utilize whatever power under the curve, under the facility power assumption. So during the day, if you have a lower demand, you can utilize more power to the EV chargers. During the night, during the sleeping at night, when you have a lower demand for your own usage, you're gonna direct more of this power to your EV demand, to your EV cars, and that means you're gonna have the same infrastructure, but you're withdrawing more power from the current infrastructure you're having in your area. Back to you, Rida.
Okay, thank you so much, Abdelrahman. Very interesting presentation, and we look forward to talking more in the discussion. Okay, so we're moving along here. The last presentation before our discussion is from Mr. Sami Alawiye, who is the CEO of GreenParking, and he'll be talking about the current challenges of EV infrastructure market in the UAE and what are the proposed best practices and solutions to accelerate this. Sam, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Rida. Dear friends, dear visitors, dear partners, I've just had a look at the attendees list, and I must tell you, I'm really stunned to see that we have guests from Australia, from Japan, from China, basically from all continents of the world. So good morning to you, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. I'm not going to say good night yet, but I feel very honored and privileged to be able to share our EV knowledge with all of you today. Thank you for visiting. Next. As many of you might not know us because we are active in the GCC region, we are, our company, GreenParking, has been established for 25 years. We are the only one-stop shop parking and mobility company currently in the UAE, and we have been ranked a top 10 SME company by government of UAE several times. Next, please. So we have two main products. The first product is a parking management system, and the second main product are EV charging solutions. Next, please. We also provide services. So we are the largest private car park operator in Dubai, and we are the first and only operator of our own EV charging network in all of GCC currently. Next. This is a very interesting slide, I find, Currently we have around 3,000 electric vehicles in the United Arab Emirates, but we have a total number of around 700 smart EV chargers. And here the focus is very important on smart. This means these chargers can basically communicate. Out of these 700, we were fortunate to provide 500 smart EV chargers. And the main reason for that is not because we are better than others, it's because we started this kind of business 10 years ago. So we had some kind of advantage in the learning curve, and the time we were able to install this kind of technology. So if you look at the ratio now, the ratio is quite stunning to me. We have a ratio of 4 electric vehicles per smart charger in the United Arab Emirates. And if you compare this with a country like Norway, which has been leading in EV technology worldwide, that currently has 20-to-1 ratio, you will be able to see that we here in the Emirates have a 5-time higher ratio, beneficial ratio than a country like Norway. And the last information here is the European community is targeting a ratio for electric vehicle chargers to cars of 10-to-1 within this year, 2020, which definitely is not going to be achieved due to the Corona crisis. Next, please. So although the total number of EV chargers is excellent compared to the total number of cars here in the UAE, unfortunately, the number of chargers and installation leads to it not being evenly distributed. Next. So what you see on this graph here is that 80% of these 700 chargers are basically installed in Dubai, whereas the remaining 20% are distributed between all the other Emirates and the Sultanate of Oman. Next. This is our first EV charger installation in the UAE. For DEWA, DEWA is the Dubai Electricity and Water Authority, and that already happened 2014, and that was by far the first city and country to install smart EV chargers. Next. So we have 2 approaches to the EV business. One is us being a supplier, where we are a proud partner of DEWA, installing more than 250 smart EV chargers for their requirements. But we also developed and supplied the basic charge point management software, which is very, very important for future mobility solutions to be used for public chargers in Dubai. And overall, as I said before, we have over 500 charging points. So this is us being a supplier. Next. And in addition to this, no, one back, please. In addition to this, we have introduced the first EV charging network in GCC. And what is the EV network? It is a free of charge infrastructure system, free of charge for the users, consisting of smart EV chargers. They are all installed only at commercial buildings like hotels, shopping malls, residential towers, and they have the intention of covering gaps within the EV charging locations that local authorities cannot provide yet. On the left side, you see where all these chargers that we have installed are currently located. And this is currently the only way for you using our network is for, at this stage, the only way for you to travel by an electric vehicle from the western border of Abu Dhabi all the way to Muscat, if you are not a Tesla driver. Next, please. So this is just a summary of some features that the app can provide. I don't have enough time to explain the app today, but if you're interested in it, you can just go to the ed-network.ae website. You can download all the information, or you just go to the Apple App Store and download whatever is required and interesting for you. So where can I charge my EV? Currently, you can charge it either at public locations or private locations. The easiest way, the least troublesome way, if you are one of the fortunate people that live in a villa or a townhouse anywhere in the world, then you can come in the evening, you just plug your car, and then you can charge it very easily. The problem arises if you are a resident in a big tower or if you work at a big tower, and the only opportunity for you is to charge your car there. Please. Next. So we have currently identified 3 key challenges that these kind of towers are facing and will be facing for the future. Next. The first challenge is because we have an increase in electric vehicles in the region, there is a lot of pressure within these towers to install electric vehicle charging stations to take care that their residents or the users are able to charge their cars. Second. Next. So this slide only provides our services on how we can help to solve the first challenge. You can read it later on by downloading the presentation. I don't have a lot of time to explain it here, but I move to the second challenge. These are the government regulations. So nowadays, the government here in our country has decided that 5% of the car park spaces should be green parking spaces. And that leads to the landlords or the facility management to have to invest, to make huge investments to cater for this and take care that 5% of their spaces are there to provide electric charging for future EV holders. Next.
2 minutes, Sam.
Yeah. Next. And the last and most important challenge that we face is that all these towers, unfortunately, have a lack of power capacity. So although they would like to make the investment, and even if they want to make the investment, they simply do not have spare power to install as many chargers as they want. And what is the solution for that? Next. So one of it is the smart dynamic load management technology that would allow you to distribute the available power evenly between the chargers that you install. So if one car, if you have a spare power of 22 kilowatt, one car is charging, it will get 22 kilowatt. As soon as 2 cars are charging, these 22 kilowatt will be evenly distributed. And my last slide, please. Now this shows you the benefits of an app, whether it's a GreenParking app or somebody else's app, it doesn't really matter. But our app can solve the problems that you have. There are 5 key solutions for the problems that these towers are facing. The first one is real-time charger availability information. That means in the morning before you drive into that tower, you will be able to see on your app whether the charger or any charger is available. The second, and that's the most important benefit, is that the app will allow you to reserve. So a day before you come to the tower, the landlord gives you 3-hour charging option. You would be able to decide which slot you would like to charge, and you would be the only one who can use the charger during that slot. And because it's a value-added service, yeah, you could charge additional revenues and make additional revenues from out of this feature. The third one is you are flexible as a landlord or facility management company to control the charging time per user. If anybody misuses the charging possibility, you can either inform him, or you can warn him, or you can even completely block him from charging. You get all kinds of statistics. You could later on charge, invoice for the power that has been used. And finally, because the chargers that are installed are all smart chargers, the service company, whoever that is, would be able to identify in case a charger has a malfunctioning and would be immediately able to react. So you always guarantee that your service standards in your towers are world-class. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sam. All right, great presentation. So if I could ask all the panelists to please come back on, turn on your webcams again, and we will go ahead and start the discussion. Okay, so I want to thank all of the audience, first of all, for asking so many questions. I hope we will be able to get as many as we can. So if we could try to keep our answers relatively quick and informative, we will get to as many questions as we can. But this is really a great turnout on questions. Okay, so let me just start. This is a general question on the oil price. So is this a real potential something that could kill the EV market? And how could the issue of low oil prices be addressed across the region? Anyone want to take that first? Yeah, Yarob. You need to unmute yourself, Yarob.
Hello?
Yes, we hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. So regarding oil prices, and despite oil prices are going down, countries may not reflect these prices on consumers. For instance, and while oil prices, we've seen that they're going down more than 50%, countries like Jordan and many others, we've seen only little reduction has been reflected on end users. Also, on the long run, everybody knows and believes that oil prices would go back up again. This is the main perception of many people. And also besides that, more EV people would consider other reasons for shifting to electric vehicles, such as advanced technologies, clean energies, and simply, to be part of the future of transportation. So I hope this answered the question.
Okay, thank you, Yarob. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything. Otherwise, we'll go to the next question. Abdelrahman, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, just 2 points, technical points quickly. I totally agree with what Yarob said. And due to the fact that electrical motors can deliver the full torque at 0 speed, which is the pretty technical thing, the electric mobility is really strong tool for all the movement, heavy movement, and even sometimes tracking. The more we're going to getting advanced with the battery capacities and the charging technologies, we are going to find that the electric mobility is much better even than the fuel options. And remember that the drivetrain and electric motors, batteries are all very modular development. So if we're thinking of the future of mobility as being with pods, with shared cars, with different kind of shared designs, the electric motors and the batteries and this kind of standard set is much more suited for the future than the normal ICE engines.
Okay, thank you, Abdelrahman. Okay, next question I'll get to is on technologies. So the question is, how does the panel see the future of fuel cell electric vehicles compared to electric vehicles? Is this something that you see as potentially challenging electric vehicles? And if I could also add another technology, would be wireless charging technologies. How could that future also impact the future? Who wants to take that on?
Maybe I can.
Okay, Stephan and then Torsten.
Okay.
I will just speak maybe on a broader scale, looking at fuel cells, so means hydrogen. Hydrogen has a great potential, particularly in this region. There's a good capacity of, obviously I'm talking about green hydrogen mainly. We're producing already hydrogen from gas, but looking at the huge potential of renewable energies in this region, we can probably anticipate that the lowest cost of production of green hydrogen will come from this region, notably places where we can mix various sources of clean energies. Saudi Arabia is a good contender for that, where you have lots of wind on the coast, you have solar. So you can imagine that hydrogen will play a massive role in the future as a fuel. However, this is a bit down the line. The reality, the economics, the reality of today is towards electric vehicles. Even though both are electrics at the end of the day, it's just that there's a medium using fuel cells. Both
To be clear, both cars are electric, but the competitive advantage in terms of cost versus the batteries, lithium ion batteries, is that we will have to wait a little bit more on the cost of production of hydrogen. But definitely on the long term, today what we're looking at is for short distance, for personal use, electric mobility solves the equation today. In the future would be used, hydrogen would play a role for personal use because of a longer range, so a bit of improvement on the fear of running out of electricity. But today the question is already on the table for very long transport, means shipping industry, truck industry, where they already have solutions. If you take Nikolai, for example, technology in terms of trucks, long distance trucks, they're already up and running. There's also a couple of vessels that have been designed using hydrogen. So for today, we're looking only at very long distance, heavy industry. Probably for tomorrow, the solution will come with a mix of the use of fuel cells.
Thanks, Stephan. Torsten, what do you think? Torsten, you're muted.
I think Stephan already said a lot.
You're good. Sorry,
I should not be muted. Can you hear me?
You're fine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Stephan already said a lot of points. I only have to add one thing, because with all the others I can agree with. It's about efficiency, and that's, in my point of view, the biggest challenge. If you have a pure view on the facts and figures, you see that hydrogen will provide an efficiency from source to wheel of about 33%. And if you compare this with battery-driven electric vehicles, you have an efficiency of 75%, something like this. So the battery vehicles are much more efficient, but as Stephan already said, for drugs, for long distances and things like this, it makes sense to go for hydrogen and not to make too big batteries. That's the only thing I can add to this. All the rest was perfectly well explained by Stephan.
Okay.
We can see we have a couple of fuel cell cars running in the UAE. There's even a fueling station in the area in Dubai, so you can even recharge your car if you have one, if you have a Mirai, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay, next question is more on planning. So maybe Sam, you could take this. Are there recommendations for the distribution of charging stations in the city, like maximum radius between EV station and others? So in general, maybe just if you could talk about planning and address that question.
Well, it's very difficult for me to talk about it, because this is something that is related to power utilities, and it's related to the decision making of the respective governments and emirates, etc. And there's a close correlation here between the planning and the lack of power capacity. So basically, the planning depends on where the power is, and because you don't want to incur too much investment on installing a charger, and in order to install a charger, you have to first install a power plant. Yeah. So this is something is difficult for me to answer, and I'll leave it for the authorities to do that. But what I can tell you is, from a private perspective, this was the main reason why we started our EV network, because we saw that there are gaps within the respective states and the emirates and the countries. And when we bought our first electric cars, we were able to drive within Dubai perfectly well. But once we wanted to have a meeting, let's say in Abu Dhabi or Alawiye, then we had to really calculate, like airline pilot, whether the remaining energy that we have will allow us to return back. And then we said, okay, let's take things into our own hands. Let's install our own chargers. Let's make this investment ourselves, knowing that for the next couple of years, this kind of network will not be commercially viable. Yeah. But what I can see is that a lot of private initiatives are starting, like what Yarob said, that this is happening in Jordan shortly, and we get a lot of interest and requirement from neighboring countries such as Saudi Arabia, to see whether we can cooperate into expanding these kind of networks.
Thanks, Sam. Anyone want to add anything else? Otherwise, we'll go to the next question. Maybe something on standards. So there's a question, is there a way to unify the charging hardware specifications or put in legislation to prevent the need to change the charging station whenever a newer model comes out, or be able to charge any vehicle in any station? We had another question, any chance in the future to have one charger for all types and all sizes of EV cars? So in general, standards and trying to unify. Anyone want to take that on? Abdelrahman.
So actually, we are in the process of unifying. So if we look to the outlook of the EV market 10 years ago, we had much more modes of charging and different kind of sockets and different communication modules. We are now currently in this, so we are evolving, and we have went through a very long way. Don't think only of the cables and different kind of sockets. Think of the communication, because if you're going to have different manufacturers doing different chargers, and all these chargers are talking to one central network for the billing and payment, you need to have one communication method. And like, for example, the OCP, which is the kind of communication, unified communication method, which now majority of manufacturers are moving toward this. Also, for example, and this is, as you can see that globally, that the EC charging is moving more to the T2, so it's becoming more dominant. And the new countries, which is like, for example, UAE or in the whole Gulf, in Egypt, all of these countries are using only T2 as a socket. So we're getting more and more unified. The DC were still a little bit behind because there are still two kind of chargers, cables, general CCS and CHAdeMO. But I think the general mood is to move to more standardized thing, because this is the logic way to move. So it's going to happen. In UAE, we're seeing this. The government now requirement, in most of the Gulf countries actually, is only for one, allowing only for one kind of cable for the AC charging, which is T2, and only the most common two types of DC chargers, which is CCS and combo. And any manufacturer who wants to bring a new car with different requirement, he has to bring the kind of a coupler or kind of converter to have this car allowed to be imported here in UAE.
Thanks, Abdelrahman. Anybody want to add anything else? Otherwise, we'll go to the next question. Let's talk about market options. So a couple of questions on market options. One talks about other countries have plenty of choices when it comes to EVs, while in the MENA region, our options are really limited to 3 or 4 types of vehicles. So how are things changing perhaps in terms of market options for the region? And then another question which is related is we see that Tesla is dominating the EV automakers market share. What is your projections, this is for Torsten, for German automakers to catch up from a technology and infrastructure perspective? Who wants to take that first? So Sam, maybe go first.
Well, this is a very, very good question. This is a very good question because at the moment we have 3,000 or 3,500 full electric vehicles in the UAE, but we could have 15,000 based on demand. Yeah, we could have 15,000. The main reason why we don't have this number is simply because the manufacturers worldwide are not delivering enough electric vehicles to our region, except Tesla. Yeah, so all the others are have so much demand within their home countries, and they get so many state subsidies and tax reductions if they decide to sell their cars in Europe or sell their cars in America, that we are all lacking behind here. And the CEBC and did a great job to have many meetings with the suppliers here to get at least a relevant number of cars the next couple of years, electric vehicles, that would continue driving this business locally and regionally.
Thanks, Sam.
Maybe just
Stephan.
to give more, to jump on Sam's details, that yes, at CBC, this is one of the purpose of trying to link, people together to push the markets towards its transformation. So we have discussion with some of our members. We have Mercedes, Renault, MAN, Tesla, trying to understand what are the hurdles. There are some hurdles, practical hurdles, beside the fact that obviously the market is rather small, but they have also to comply to regulation, and sometimes it takes time. It costs money for a market which seems rather small at this moment. However, the good news is that we were, if you remember, for the last couple of years, we were running with the same couple of models. Renault has been a pioneer from the beginning, and then Chevy Bolt came on. Tesla was there, but from 2021, we see what we hear from the manufacturers. You know that there's a Porsche Taycan coming, Audi e-tron, Mercedes EQC, the Jaguar E-Pace, an MG. So we see a good amount of new models coming on this year and between next year, which is good for all of us because we have to have more choice, but also some people, if you remember, used to import even their cars, which is sometimes of a nonsense. Yeah.
Okay, anyone else want to add anything on this question?
Yeah, I can give some answer.
Just the good news. Sorry.
Okay, Torsten, then Abdelrahman.
Yeah, okay. Just to give a short answer to Sam, although in Europe, in Germany, it's very difficult to get an electric vehicle or to buy an electric vehicle at the moment because production capacities are just not large enough to produce as many cars as are required. And there was a second part of the question, which was about what will come up. And Stephan already gave a very good overview. And I can confirm this, that the car manufacturers I'm in contact with, they have a lot of cars in their pipeline, which we will see in the upcoming years. So I think there will be a massive number of new electric vehicles coming from the European car manufacturers as well. And of course, they have to compete against Tesla, who is already there. I think they did a lot of things quite well in the past, and we will see how it will go on in this situation.
Okay, Abdelrahman?
Yeah, actually, it is in the same line. So through our global office, we get contact with many of the global car manufacturers who want to do testing for their cars with the charging cycles in UAE because of the very high temperature here in UAE. It's a part of the requirement. And I can confirm to you that many of the other manufacturers are in the process of bringing their cars. Actually, I have a meeting tomorrow with one very luxurious manufacturer. It's the first time for them in the region, and they're bringing a new car and they want to do testing, charging testing in the region. So it is coming. It's just going to take more time.
Great to hear. Okay.
Yeah, maybe just for the audience, for the fear of temperature, there is an issue on temperature for the charging station itself. But that's not the subject. Some can explain that if someone wants an answer. But for cars, we have records now from members from the network. People have been driving up and down Abu Dhabi, Dubai with Teslas. I have myself a car which is now 3 years old, and the battery is depleting at very, very low rate. Even though using a full-on AC in summer, we lose a tiny bit of percentage, which is completely in line with what we see in all the rest in the rest of the world.
Yes, we had a few questions on the impact of high temperature, and it is a manageable issue in the region. Okay, if there's no other thoughts on high temperature, let me ask a couple questions related to the market. There are some questions on the secondhand market. How is the secondhand market in Jordan and across the region? What is, in general, or more specifics, what are the prices of vehicles as you go into this secondhand market? Anyone want to take that? Yarob.
Yeah, so regarding second-hand electric cars, you know, for the prices, like in Jordan, this can go as cheap as for economic cars, maybe below the $10,000 US per EV. And you know, the growth in Jordan started with the second-hand cars. However, people started to realize the risks associated with the imported second-hand EVs. So these risks are mainly related to sometimes getting stuck with non-standard charging types. Because imported, you know, cars are imported from different regions, either Japan, USA, or Europe. Also, we've seen, you know, people realize that maintenance and spare parts can also be a big problem for them. So now, with more car dealers introducing more models with more battery sizes, we have seen lately that more people are considering buying brand new cars from certified dealers with the service centers available in the city. I'm not sure about other countries. Maybe Egypt has, you know, some similar experiences. But I think with the electric vehicles, the experience can be different from a traditional car because the technology used and service maintenance required has different requirements.
Thank you, Yarob. Any other thoughts on this topic? Otherwise, I'll go to...
It's probably a market to grab, because when I see the amount of people looking for electric vehicles and the prices are still on the high side, definitely in the region, because lack of subsidies, because what we discussed, I think it's a good market to take. There's a good demand for that, and I think workshops, local workshops, are preparing themselves to be able to maintain. But also there's a little to maintain on those vehicles compared to, it's more digital and technology than mechanical.
We have of course the biggest problem in the second-hand market for EVs is that you know, the lifetime of a battery is calculated between 6 years, 8 years maximum. So we're talking about 7 years. And if you look at people willing to sell their cars, you see, to change another car, especially if it's an EV car, maybe they're considering to do that after 3, 4, or 5 years. So if you want to buy a second-hand car with a battery that's 5 years old, you really have to think about it very thoroughly, because the value of that battery is around a third of the whole value of the car. So what happens if the battery fails? Who's going to change the battery? And if you change the battery for a new battery, and that is a third of a new car value, then suddenly buying a second-hand electric vehicle is not so recommendable anymore. So people really have to be aware about the battery technology, especially the old battery technologies that has been used. Maybe in the future, this thing will change, but at the moment, I find it quite risky.
Okay. So we will go on, by the way, for the attendees, we'll go on for another 8 minutes or so, since we've gotten such great questions. So taking it a step further, so after the second-hand market, what about the issue of electric battery recycling and the issue of disposal of EVs at the end of their lifetime? Is that something that is being considered and taken into account by companies and governments? Who wants to take that on?
The only thing I'm not from the manufacturer's side, but I can just relay what I hear during our meeting at the Future Mobility Club is manufacturers are recycling those batteries more than the usual battery you find in a petrol car, because they are not recycled. They all end up, you know, buried in the sand in this part of the world. So that's the good news. They are recycled. I'm not aware of any recycling center in the UAE or the region, but at least it's done from the OEM side. Yeah, that's all what I can say on my side.
Just a quick add-on.
Abdelrahman, then Torsten. Yeah.
Yes. Just a quick add-on to the question, Stephan, that I'm also not from the manufacturer side, but during our discussion with the manufacturers and utility, for any manufacturers to bring this car here in UAE, they have to make a contract with one local company for the battery disposal. And BIA, they have one unit which is in UAE, BIA, one of the companies, they have a unit which is dedicated only for the recycle. So there's kind of arrangement here existing in UAE.
Excellent. Torsten?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm also not a manufacturer of electric vehicles, but we are a manufacturer of energy storage systems, also, of course, including batteries, and we take them back as well as manufacturers and recycle them. And in my perspective, in the future, it will be a large source for raw materials as well, because there are so many valuable components in the battery, in lithium-ion battery, that it's really worth to recycle it. And it will come also for economical reasons. That's for me quite sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, question on COVID impacts on supply and demand for electricity. So there's major shifts in electricity consumption across commercial and residential sectors. Any insights from any of the panelists on how consumer behavior and charging behavior is changing in these times? Anyone want to take that on?
Well, I can
just a
go.
quick comment.
Abdelrahman to
So
start.
I believe it's still quite early because we are still in the lockdown phase. So people were not moving. So we have the demand which we're seeing increasing as a manufacturer is that on the households that people are staying longer hours, and offices they are using less AC or less heating. However, people are not doing commuting more frequently. And okay, this is my own opinion. Still quite early to decide if there is an actual dominant demand shift in demand due to COVID-19.
I'll mention from my side, in terms of energetics, we have just been funded by the US government to try to answer this question. So we're analyzing national data across the United States at this point, and we're trying to basically create the largest data set of its kind that will be publicly available. So that is something that a project that has just started. It's called EV Watts. That's been funded by the US government. So that could be something that we could see also in the future here in the region. Once the market gets more developed, we could see kind of efforts to try to understand electricity and charging trends. Okay, in terms of a couple more questions here. One is related to business sector. So in terms of installing charging stations at properties in the future, would businesses be managing this themselves or be using an operator, or do they even know how to start? How do you see this across the region, B2B? Yeah, Sam.
Yeah, this is a very, very important and crucial question. And you see, we have, just if I talk about Dubai, we have hundreds, if not thousands of towers, okay? And the problem starts when the first person within this tower decides to buy electric vehicle, okay? So then, as soon as he buys electric vehicle, we have, let's say, 1,000 tenants in the tower. He goes to the facility management company or the landlord and says, I want to charge. I want to charge. And these people have no experience, of course, because it's not their business. And then the person who bought the, let's say, the electric vehicle wants the charger to be on his parking lot, okay? So maybe the landlord decides to say, okay, because you are the first one, I give you this possibility to have your charger. But once we have 10 cars or 20 cars or 30 cars, we have a big problem because we have a lack of power capacity. So this is impossible for the landlord to handle. Now, the second question that comes is, for one electric vehicle, the landlord might say, okay, you know what, I give you the charging for free. But once you have 10 or 20 or 30, why should the landlord pay the electricity on behalf of you? Then the next question comes, okay, so if the tenant wants to charge, how do I make sure that he pays me back the time? I'm not going to have a clock next to every single charger that is able to decide how much energy I have consumed, and then I still don't know who used that energy. And that's why you will not be able to handle these kind of things unless you have a smart app that is able to differentiate between the users, the user time, and how much they consumed. This is the first one. And if you want to start with an easy model, then at least you must have a system that's providing, payments through credit card or providing payment through kind of cashless payments or advance payment or something like that. So definitely you need to have this management. And finally, the landlord would not be able to afford to manage all of this because he cannot employ 1 or 2 people to handle load management and to handle EV charging management because there's simply not enough cars in this tower. So that will always need to have special companies that are expert in this kind of field that can remotely do the service for the landlord. This is my opinion and strong belief for the future.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, Sam, thank you. Okay, folks, in terms of time, we really are out of it, so we won't be able to take any more questions, but I'll remind everyone that we will try to answer questions and actually send you back responses after the webinar. I do want to ask maybe just a parting thought from each of the panelists. There's so much negativity in the news right now, so maybe something positive and something that we can control. Right now, so many things are out of our control with the COVID situation, but what is something that is within all of our control that can help to really ensure that our EV revolution continues or accelerates even into the future? So maybe just any final parting thoughts I'll just go through. Maybe Sam, do you want to start? And we'll go to the right.
Well, thank you very much for that very, very important question. As I explained before, we are a parking company and we are EV charging company, EV business company. So the last couple of years, we have been actually subsidizing the EV network and the EV business from our car parks. And we had a lot of income, cash flow from the car parks. And what we found during this COVID-19 disaster is all our car parks are closed. And what saved us now is that we are having so many orders for EV chargers and EV software that it is now basically subsidizing our car parking business. And it's unbelievable. If I tell it to people, they don't, what? People are buying chargers for electric cars? Yes, because they believe in the future and we believe in the future. And I find this to be a very, very positive message.
Love it. Great, Sam. Abdelrahman.
So the very common message, guys, stay safe, stay positive. This first. Second, COVID-19 changed all the norms that we're following. So actually, I see the future more greener. You saw on a fun fact that how people were happy mentioning seeing the fish in the Canal of Venice. So people, you give them some kind of a reference for a good, clean, better future, better air quality, and they would like to go to it one day. So the future is definitely 100% greener. We know this for fact.
Yeah, very true. Very good point. Stephan?
Yeah, well, just to close, thanks everyone for taking the time and spend this couple of hours with us. I think from a positive perspective, it's very clear we are at a crossroad between COVID-19 crisis and oil collapse in this region. So as a supporter of the zero carbon transition, it is already positive because there is no way you're talking about positive and control or manageable. We cannot stop the EV industry now to continue. It's positive, but it's uncontrollable because there's so much money involved and prices of cost of production of vehicles, of batteries keeps on going down. And that's the only issue still for users today, it's the price. But even if you take the overall lifetime of your vehicle, it's already much better than a conventional car. So there's nothing to stop this. That's very positive. And also, if people start to think about efficiency, yeah, I mean, an ICE vehicle is the worst in terms of efficiency, in terms of unit of transport. Even with the $20 a barrel, it's still not comparable to an electric car. So I remain very positive in this context. It's the right moment for us to to sit down and look at what we have done until now and take a new direction, continue on our zero carbon transition, and that's what we're doing at ENGIE. Thanks, you.
Stephan. Torsten, any final thoughts?
Yeah. First, I would like to thank everybody for today's webinar. That's for sure. It was a great event from my perspective. And what makes me most positive, even in COVID situation at the moment, is that the investment and the growth of the renewables are still ongoing. We see that the energy transition proceeds. And if you have a look on our sales figures of our energy management solutions in the company, we see a massive growth even this year, even with COVID. So the mindset of the people has not been changed. So they are still in direction of energy transition and renewables. And this makes me very happy also for the time after COVID that we go on this way and to make the world a bit more greener, more electric. And yeah, we should keep on going like this.
Thank you. And Yarob, if you want to close us out, please.
Yes, I agree with everybody what they said. This cannot be stopped, and in fact, it didn't stop 100% all the time. So it's true that shipments were slowed down and logistics as well. However, we've seen during the past period things getting back to normal gradually. Today, we've seen that car dealers are still bringing more orders for more cars. And actually, we're even planning to install 10 DC charging fast charging chargers during the next month. So despite all the challenges, things cannot be stopped, and life is moving on. And finally, again, I would like to thank everybody, all the attendees and all participants for this exciting event. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. On behalf of the Clean Energy Business Council, thank you to the panelists and thank you to the attendees for being here. I'll finish with a couple of reminders to please fill out the CEBC survey that was mentioned by Stephan. You'll be sent a link to that following the webinar. And then Ahmed, if you could show the next slide, which is the next webinar that actually the CEBC will be holding, which will be focused on the impact of COVID-19 on ESCO M&V activities. So this is measurement and verification activities. Of course, as we all know, there's been major shifts in the occupancy of buildings and the occupancy of hotels and hospitals. And so the question really is for M&V practitioners and those interested in measurement and verification of energy savings. How does that impact what's going on with measuring and verifying those energy savings? So that will be that webinar. Ahmed, if you could show that slide again, that will be coming up in early June. And you will have a chance, it'll be June 4th at 4 p.m. Gulf Standard Time. We have 3 excellent speakers, coming from EVO, Leah Webster, Amin and Najjar from Innova, and Gary Sony, who is with Smart for Power. So with that, I will close things out. Thank you all again for being here. And we look forward to future discussion, hopefully meeting in person sometime soon.
Thank you very much, Rida. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
How do we close this?